什么时候停的？
On the morning of the 24th, information was not readily available, and the amount of misinformation floating around the web was drowning out any actual reports of what was going on. On the one hand, you had Russian bots peddling Russian propaganda, and how Ukraine was being beaten over the head by the superior Russian army on all fronts, and on the other, you had the average Twitter user and Ukrainian believe-all posters taking everything they see on Twitter and taking it as fact, despite it was older footage or footage captured from fucking DCS World. You had the Maters of Snake Island, who were a detachment of everyday beat cops who held Snake Island off against the Russian Navy after promptly telling them to fuck themselves, despite there is a high possibility that the conversation between the police and the VMF was fake, let alone the fact any of the police died at all. The information from Snake Island is so muddy and filled with bullshit, you would probably have an easier time finding a needle in a haystack than you can finding legitimate evidence of what happened on that tiny-ass island. You also had the mythos coming from the Ghost of Kiev, one of many Ukrainian pilots who was able to get airborne and supposedly took out 6 Russian aircraft. Whether or not it is the same MiG-29, for the first time in that death trap of an aircraft's history they have actually attained a positive kill-to-death ratio. Whether or not you believe the Ghost of Kiev story at all, what is true is that the Russians, on top of the entire morning of fuck-ups they attained, failed to disable Ukrainian airbases in the grand scheme of things, which unfortunately for the Russians means Ukraine was still able to get into the air and lay down the hate of 1,000 suns onto the Russian Air Force and forces trying to bum rush from Donetsk. More supposed fake news that came about was that of Russian VDV and Spetsnaz landing in a cargo airport in Hostomel, just north of Kiev. Unfortunately, this was not fake news but a story for another day. Nonetheless, to claim anyone actually has a solid grasp of what the hell is going on in Ukraine at this point is either lying or has the mental capacity of a gnat.
Crisis in Ukraine. Russia has begun its invasion of Ukraine, shocking the world and potentially leading to galactic-wide conflict. Collectively as one, most countries of the intergalactic community have condemned the invasion, while others have placed increasingly harsh sanctions on Russia. But this has done very little to stop the advance upon the snow-swept fields and cities of Ukraine, as the Jedi Council decides the best course of action. An unknown Jedi has taken to the skies and has allegedly shot down 6 Russian fighters, gaining the name of the Ghost of Kiev. However, the outcome of this war still hangs in the balance and is up to a brave field to decide the future of Ukraine. The galaxy is paying close attention to the outcome of this conflict.
The United Nations in the meantime unleashed the superpowers of doing literally nothing. Thanks to the bullshit rules of the Security Council, Russia was allowed to veto a motion against its own invasion of Ukraine, and I absolutely shit you not, the UN proceeded to say you can veto our motion, but you cannot veto our voices. I mean, who is actually surprised the UN pulled a Hans Blix and told an aggressor country stop, or we will say stop again. It is literally the geopolitical equivalent of getting murdered by an axe murderer, and saying stop killing me, or I will say stop again. Whilst the UN sat around with a thumb up its ass, Ukraine enforced policies to prevent any able-bodied person to flee the country, as now it was a war for their mere survival. Clearly, when you start conscripting grannies to aid in the defense, you have truly earned the achievement of scraping the barrel. And much like a game of NSEG on easy mode, Ukraine was about to go absolutely apeshit on the Russians to a scale no one could have possibly imagined.
And tear until it is done.